Hello.
Hello.
And welcome to another podcast. Sorry, we were
Dancing.
dancing to the wee song that plays. That we can't
In
hear
our
right
head.
now. No, it's a song that plays at the start of the podcast that we can't hear right now, but once we edit it, it will. Anyway, today we want to chat about God's faithfulness.
Yeah.
So we were just driving home, we had to get new tires on our car, and we were like, okay, we need to record a podcast, and you sort of had a thought just right then about God's faithfulness, and it reminded me of a talk I just did actually with the young people at our church, that we thought we think might be helpful for everyone.
Yeah.
And really it's around this whole idea about how our past with someone has an influence on our present and our future with them. Yeah. So, goodness, we have now known each other for how many years?
Such a long, wonderful time.
Such a long, wonderful time. But we'll be married 19 years next week.
Yes.
2 weeks. 2 weeks time. But we've known each other for what? 2, 3, 4 years before that.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's say 25 years. Let's call it 25. Might not be exactly that. But we've known each other for 25 years. And over those 25 years, we have built a knowledge of each other, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So from watching each other, from talking, from hanging out, there's things about Janet that I know, and there's things about me that she knows. And it's not just that we know the past things, but because we know the things of them in the past, we can predict what we're going to be like today and what we're likely to be like tomorrow, right? So now, of course, everyone changes and we can all alter, and of course we've changed over the years, but I guess the whole concept, you could think about that, whether it's your best friend, whether it's your partner, husband, wife, kids, parents, whatever it is, whatever stage you're at in life, you have a knowledge of who they are based on your experience of them.
Yeah.
And that forms a way forward with them. And it also means if anyone else was to come to you with any other information. So if someone came to me and said, oh my goodness, I don't know if you've ever met Janet Young, but she is so boring and she is always pretty melancholic and, she's never excited about anything. I'd be like, you're talking about a different Janet, because the Janet I know means that can't be the Janet you've met, right? You get the picture on this. And so I guess on this podcast, we always talk about the fact we follow Jesus, right? That God is the number one relationship in our lives. He's the one that we're trying to fashion our lives afterwards.
Yeah.
And what we want to talk about is, does God follow the same pattern as we do within our human relationships, right?
Yeah.
So does the history of God, what God has done in the past, whether it's something personal or whether it's something we've heard from someone who lived a couple hundred years ago, or whether it's all the way back and we read about it in the scriptures, it is what he revealed about his nature and what he did in those days. Does that have a bearing on what we trust him to do today and what we trust him to do tomorrow or next year or the year after, right? Because the same principle should apply. That doesn't make sense, right? So even if we might not have personally experienced a miracle, the reality is we probably did and we just didn't notice it, but let's say we think we didn't, we can look back and say, well, God split the Red Sea in the Bible, Jesus raised someone from the dead, he healed this, and the Bible tells us that with God with us, we can also see those things.
Yes.
Well, surely that should be enough for us to believe.
Yeah, we can build on that. We can trust that. Yeah.
That we can trust that and that he will do that again.
Yeah.
However, if we're probably being honest, there's too many times, and I think I can say this personally, I'm sure you can too, where we don't apply the same logic. So actually we go, I know maybe God did that in life, even if we saw it personally. Or, I've heard them talk about that, or I read about that in a Bible or in the book or in a book somewhere, but I'm just not sure that it's for me. And we might not verbalize it like that for someone who follows Jesus, but in our head, that's the kind of dialogue that runs. And so I guess our question around that is, so why do we do that? And the bigger question that we really want to land on is, and what are we going to do about the fact that we sometimes do that? If that makes sense. And I think as we chatted about, as I prayed and as for that talk and as I wrote a bit about it, I guess some of the things are sometimes we don't think that he can do it today or tomorrow because maybe it wasn't a personal experience of ours. So perhaps we haven't seen God do a thing in our lives that we would like him to do. But
Yeah.
we have heard our next door neighbour, or we have heard someone in church, or we
Yeah.
have heard a story from the past or read
Yeah.
it in the Bible. But because we haven't personally seen it,
Yeah.
it kind of feels like, well, maybe he only does that for other people, or
Yeah.
maybe he only did that at a certain time,
Yeah.
and now he doesn't do it
Yeah.
today. So
Or the
there's
stories that we've heard can be from other places far away from where we live.
Yeah.
So then we're like, oh yeah, but our context is different.
that only happens
Can't-
there. Yeah,
exactly.
So
Yeah.
sometimes there's that. Sometimes it's maybe because we've had a negative experience of it, right? So maybe we believe that God is someone who heals and does miracles and is powerful to change any circumstance. But in our own lives, we've prayed again and again and again and again and again for a circumstance to change or a diagnosis
Right.
to change, and we haven't seen it.
Yeah.
So perhaps because we've had that negative experience of something, that
Allow
has
that to form something.
yeah, so again, in a similar way with the human relationship, if, like if Janet started all of a sudden attacking me with a stick
Right.
every day for, the next month, I would start to go, wait a wee minute, is something changed?
Yeah.
Right, weird analogy, but like that, we might think, well, maybe God's nature has changed because I haven't seen him do it, so therefore
Right.
I do that now. There's that. Sometimes it's just that we've swallowed a lie about it, right? So right back at the beginning of creation, one of the first things that Adam and Eve do before they actually disobey God is that they believe a lie about God.
Yeah.
It's when the enemy comes to him and says, I think God's holding back on you. I think you should go and do this. And they believe that first. So the kind of old phrase, I don't know who it was that said it, but they swallowed a lie before they swallowed a fruit. You know, and sometimes that can happen, right? But maybe it's a mixture because we've had a negative experience, because we haven't experienced it personally, or something, and then we just begin to believe a lie, and we know this.
I think our circumstances can sometimes be the lie that we swallow. So we can be praying for something and really wanting it, and we don't see it happen. And so then that circumstance sort of builds this false idea of who God is in us. And then like the enemy or whatever is like, oh yeah, he's not who he says he is. And he can sort of latch on to that. And then that can form this lie that we swallow where we're like, oh, this proves God isn't who he says he is. But actually there's all this other thing that if we looked at the truth, we would see actually who God is in the middle of that. Anyway, don't know if that's confusing or helpful.
I think you're right. I think that can happen. So I guess, and there could be other reasons, right? If you're listening to this, you might have other reasons. And I guess then my question is, well, what do we want to do about that? Let's say you're in a situation today, whether you're following Jesus or not, and actually you're like, I'm not sure God has some of those characteristics that people might talk about in the Bible, like, or churches talk about. I don't really believe he's a provider. I'm not sure that he's powerful. I'm not sure he's patient or loving, or that he cares, or that he's whatever characteristics we're talking about. And I guess really simply we have three choices, right? The first choice is to just accept that what we feel is that's it. That he isn't those things, right? And I've met many people like that who maybe they did walk with Jesus at one point or whatever. Maybe they've never walked with Jesus and they just believe God's cruel, that he just watches us all harm ourselves and watches wars happen and bad things in the world, and that God's just this kind of, he doesn't care, he's just sitting there, he's falling asleep if he exists at all. Like there's that. So there's the kind of I'm just going to give in to those feelings, which
kind of actively turning away from him, sort of thing.
Yeah. And then there's some, I guess, and this is many people I meet too, they just kind of plod on, don't think about it. So you just kind of get on with life, and sometimes things happen, sometimes they don't, and that's fine. And then I think the third option we have is to actively choose to believe that what he says about himself, what the Bible reveals about him, is true. Okay, and this is the category we have jumped into. Because the reality is, there are times where we've prayed for stuff and we haven't seen it. There are times where we do doubt some of God's nature, like we said at the very start of the podcast. And so I guess just in the short time that we've got left on this, we want to talk about, there's definitely two ways that I can think of, I'm sure there's way more, that we can actually actively choose, right? That would help us actively choose. And the first one we want to encourage you to do, and this is apart from, reading the Bible, learning about more, but
do all that too.
do all that's really good. But one of them is to actually keep, you can call it whatever you want, but like a God journal, a breakthrough journal, a God characteristic journal. Yeah. And actually every time in our own lives where we know that it's God's intervention, anytime that we understand that we begin to write it down. In fact, begin to do that retro, right? Begin to think back on things that have happened and write it down. And then in moments when we're struggling to believe those characteristics of God are true in another day, we reread those things to remind ourselves of what he's done. The Bible, it talks about this in the Psalms, you know, people, David, when he's lost hope, and he said, and then I turned to dwell on the things that you've done in the past, the great things that you've achieved. And so we
said it strengthened him, didn't it?
Yeah. And so we both have done this. I'm probably more organised at it.
You definitely are more organised.
But I have, not that I've remembered every moment, but I've like times when I first felt the Holy Spirit in my life, and I remember where that was and what sort of time and that feeling. So sometimes when I'm like, can God do it? I'm like, oh my goodness, I remember in 2002 this happened, and so it's really helpful. And so that's one thing that we can do. I think the other thing that's really, really important is to surround ourselves with people who fuel that in us. Okay, so surround ourselves with people who do have faith in those moments, even when we might struggle. So it could be that just being part of a friendship group or a church, where you just know there's just some people who are going to always fire that in us. Or maybe it's getting alongside specific people who have seen the things that we haven't seen and might not have faith for. So
that's good.
It could be someone like who's seen lots of healings. It could be someone who's seen God's provision in a million ways. It could be someone, you know, whatever it is, and you just go, tell me the story. I don't have the story here, and I need my faith to build in this. I need to believe this. To get alongside them, of course. Prayer and like we said, scriptures, ask the Lord to reveal himself in those ways. Continue to ask him. And I think really specifically, and I think you were touching on this, where you, whether it was in the car or here now, I can't remember, but actually to give us eyes to see how he is answering. Because if we believe that God is actively working, right, then he is always doing something.
Yes, he is.
It's just that we may not perceive what that something is, and sometimes the way that we expect to see it is not the way that he does it.
Yes.
And so anyway, I think that's kind of all, right, that we wanted to talk about in his faithfulness. And again, like we always say, we always want people to choose Jesus. We always want to see people actively choose what the Bible says. We believe it is truth. But we're not putting pressure on anyone. We understand some of you might just say, hey, that's not for me. Hey, we get it. But all I guess we want to let you know is we want to be those people who can actively remind you of what we believe, even in the times where we have our own doubts and struggles. So why don't you pray?
I would love to.
And we'll go.
All right, perfect. Yeah, God, thank you. You are so good. And you are faithful.
Yes.
Yeah, and God, I just pray for everybody watching this, Lord, that you that you would show yourself to be faithful to them, that we all would be able to see you and see your faithfulness in new ways every day. Yes. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, Lord, I pray for your encouragement for people today, Lord. And even for people who are pursuing you, who are feeling a bit discouraged at the minute, Lord, I really just pray that they would bump into you in fresh ways today, God, that they would see you revealed to them in a new way today, God, and they would know you and know your character as faithful, and that would hold them strong in the face of discouragement. Yeah. And God, I pray that you'd help us all, Lord, when we walk through times of doubting and not being sure, and or forgetting amazing things that you've done in the past, or forgetting who you are in a moment because we're faced with a circumstance that is a bit scary or overwhelming. And I just pray that you would help us to remember who you are in those moments. Help us, Lord, to remember that you are God, you are good, you are faithful, and you love us so perfectly. Yeah, God, you're just amazing. Thank you so much. Amen.
Alrighty, well, I hope that was helpful, and have a great day. Yeah. And we'll be back again
sometime
sometime soon. All right, take care. See you later. Bye-bye.